And thank you for the witnesses that are coming out this afternoon. Mr. Keeley, my questions will be for you this afternoon. Can a government meet their environmental targets by regulating the financial system or mandating climate risk disclosures?
I think, as I said in my opening remarks, that for us to achieve a net zero world, we're going to have individuals, public policies, a wide range of other forms of taxes and to create the world that we want to see. Businesses are in an ancillary position. They're not in a leading position. So to actually say that we can regulate business and finance to a greener world is, I think, misguided.
The Office of the Superintendent of Financial Institutions has introduced mandatory climate-related financial disclosure expectations for financial institutions in Canada. What are the risks associated with climate-related disclosures or ESG scores?
Well, any good financier will tell you that having more information is better and more disclosures is better, but it's a question of how that information would be utilized. To the extent, the best example would be that Scope 1, Scope 2, and ideally Scope 3 emissions would be required to be reported. But what would be done with that information is particularly dangerous. To the extent that we are going to result in a situation where we're merely divesting from brown companies, divesting from brown buildings, starving them of capital, we'll have exactly the wrong answer to our climate problems. We actually need to invest in those industries, not divest.
Is there a financial risk to the retirement savings of individual Canadians if a government attempts to meet environmental targets through pension and investment funds?
That particular risk is huge, daunting, and would almost certainly result in the loss of hundreds of billions of dollars of income over many years to Canadian pensioners. We need to invest in the world that will be, not some imagined world. As we all know, the ESG strategies that have been, there's $45 trillion in ESG strategies. It's not that these strategies are underfunded, dear friends. It's that they simply don't work. And they have been underperforming markets by 250 basis points for the last 5 years. That's going to result, if we continue in that path, underfunded pensions, people that cannot support themselves in their old age.
I forgot to actually expand on the divestment part of this. Will divestment achieve environmental objectives, and should Canadians be concerned with this approach?
I think everyone should be concerned, not just Canadians. I think there was a recent episode with ExxonMobil where we all saw that they were a number of investors voted, they remain shareholders and put in new board members. Right now, ExxonMobil is one of the leading investors in carbon capture. Thank God investors stayed engaged with ExxonMobil to help move them in the right direction. Divestiture is almost certainly the exact opposite of what we require right now to create the world that we want.
And how do you turn that tide? What else can you advise this committee as far as, because that is a common theme in this talk, is get out of that and it'll just basically the businesses will die. Is there anything else we can think about divestment and actually maybe something else we should consider there?
I think that debate is now raging on college campuses across the United States. As we all know, everybody's calling for the divestiture of Amazon, the divestiture of companies that they think will somehow end fighting in Gaza. We have to understand how limited divestiture is as a tool for solving our problems. Divestiture is not the way to go if you're actually trying to influence a corporation's behavior or affect an economic outcome.
You stated, and I quote, committing to net zero portfolio target today is somewhat like agreeing to a gluten-free diet before knowing which foods contain gluten or what nutrients one might be sacrificing in the process, end quote. Can you explain what you mean by this?
Well, thank you for reading my book. At least somebody has. It's very clear that we don't know what this divestiture movements will actually create. That $45 trillion that I spoke about is largely based upon divestiture. And many, many individuals have adopted these ESG indices that MSCI and others are coming out with. And they're basically signing up for investing in less than 1/2 of the investable market. Of the 500 corporations in the S&P 500, only 230 are currently fully aligned with net zero 2050. Why would anybody decide that they're only going to invest in those companies when, in fact, it is the browner ones that have the chance to become better corporations and outperform over time?
If pension and investment funds adopt net zero portfolios, would this do anything to achieve a net zero world?
Clearly not. A green portfolio does not create a green world. If it did, we would have gotten rid of smoking, gambling, alcohol, tobacco, firearms. All of these have been divested from over decades, and yet you can still grab a pack of cigarettes and have a beer. Divestiture has not worked to solve the underlying problems.
Bill Gates has said, and I quote, ESG investing so far has probably not removed 1 ton of carbon out of the air. Do you agree with this statement? And if so, what are the implications of allocating trillions of dollars in capital to ESG portfolios that do not reduce a quantifiable amount of emissions?
I think Bill Gates just summarized, as we have been discussing, the limited efficacy of divestiture as a tool for changing the world and changing industry. That's what Bill Gates was referring to in that quote. I obviously agree with him. I quoted him in my book.
Thank you.